who I am, what I'm doing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday night live discussion for emotional awareness. And as we do every Tuesday, going live at 7 p.m, we have an amazing guest with us. But before I introduce my guest, I want to tell you something really exciting. Apart from the fact that my hearing aid's just gone flat, bear with me. That's going to make horrible noises all night if I don't take that out. So I can half hear you tonight. Right, here we go. Yeah, we have an amazing lineup of speakers right through until the 25th of May at the moment. My next free evening for a guest speaker is on the 1st of June. So we've got some exciting things coming up for you. And I will put some updates up about that in the coming week. But for tonight, I have with me, and sorry, we were having amazing sound issues backstage tonight before coming on, and we managed to get about 60 seconds to speak before coming live. So is it Leanne or Leanne?
It's Tamuri, actually. My company is Doesnt Speaking Pros. It's Tamuri Richardson.
Oh, I can see it now on screen, like I wasn't looking down. Tamuri, sorry, apologies for that, because I haven't seen your main profile, only your business one, so I was trying to go by that. Excellent. So your business is Public Speaking Pro with Leanne. Lovely. So tell us about that, because you have, I'll just say hi to our guests as well. Hi, Yvette. Glad to see you. And we have some other viewers as well. So your business is speaking, but like anybody who speaks, we need a really good topic behind it. You don't just talk for the sake of it. So start by telling us a little bit about your speaking business and how that's come about.
Absolutely, yes. So my company is Doesnt Speaking Pros. And you're actually right, absolutely right. I think everyone who's a public speaker comes from having some message from somewhere. So I got into the world of public speaking. I've always been a speaker and a communicator, even working in corporate America. And so just understood that you had to have a message, but a message that people cared about. And then once you do that and hone in on your skills, then, you know, there you are. And I'm also an influential storyteller. So I also coach individuals on how to craft their message, their speech, their presentation, so that they're disseminating it out to the appropriate targeted audiences as well. So, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. I just realised I hadn't put my lovely background on tonight. That was all the panic with the sound issues, but we're there. Now we look professional. Go with the conversation. So I understand as well from your profile and the little bit of bio I managed to get from you is that you also do a lot of work with empowering women. So it's amazing that you're tying a lot of stuff in here together. So using your speaking, helping people tell the story, but the empowering women coming into that as well.
Absolutely. You know, I think once you realize that you have a message, and it often, and we talked about this briefly before we started, usually messages come from some place of pain or some type of trauma. And so once you're able to really connect with what happened and you're able to put you back in place, I almost feel like it's a requirement, like it's a service that we owe to other women who might end up in our situations or may even be in that situation, to help them navigate when they're ready to move forward, help them to navigate in how you did it so that they know they're not alone and that there are pathways out of really bad situations. So.
Oh, it's amazing. So how long have you been doing the public speaking? And sorry, you're going to have to bear with me on screen. This is most unprofessional, but my other one's gone flat. So I'm going to leave you to explain that while I swap batteries quickly.
No problem. Absolutely.
That's really bad timing.
Oh, no, you're perfectly fine. I've been doing it about 6 years. I had done it privately when I was working in the private sector. But as far as professionally, I've been doing it for about 6 years. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. I think it was about the same amount of time since I started training, but I've had quite a gap between when I did my training and actually starting to do, well, not that this year starting a business, I've been able to go out and do public speaking, but just speaking on live camera. Yes. And it's amazing. You do need to practice. Oh, my goodness. Especially having your equipment ready.
You do. And it's a huge difference between in-person and virtual communication. A lot of people think, oh, you're just on screen. It's completely different. So you need to know how to be able to navigate in person as well as virtual, because the screen kind of really takes a lot away from it.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, right. That's better. Back to full volume now. It literally is about half volume without losing. Yeah, so yeah, because on screen we can't stand up and do all the big gestures and move around the stage and so on.
That's right.
So for a lot of people in the speaking career this last year, with the pandemic and the lockdowns and so many events cancelled, there's been, even in this profession, there has been a lot of heartache, a lot of frustration, and probably a lot of like almost a loss of self-belief for some people as well when they get out of practice, and then they get
Yeah.
all that like, oh my goodness, I've got to go and start again. So I think there's a lot of emotions just within the profession itself, without the actual message we're trying to go out and deliver,
Yes.
and having to make all the changes. And for people who are used to standing on stage, have suddenly got to do all the social media and everything, and move into areas that perhaps not quite their strengths, and learn new skills online in
That's
a
right.
matter of years. So well done. So how has that worked out for you? How have you managed around all of that?
You know, it's been fantastic. I think most people have been able to navigate. I mean, I think Zoom is now everyone's best friend, and StreamYard for some of us is our second best friend. It's just become important to become more technologically savvy. But I think for me, my business has elevated even more so. I found myself doing more public speaking workshops. I work with middle school and high school kids, teaching them public speaking and debate as well.
Oh,
And
wow.
I do influential workshops, communications. I even work with some companies out of the country that I never would have had the opportunity to do, only focusing on face to face. So for myself, it's probably taken my business and completely where I was doing well before. I'm doing fantastic now. So COVID hasn't been
Oh,
too bad to me.
that's amazing to hear. And
Hmm.
you're not the first person I've heard to say that about,
Hmm.
actually this has really opened business up,
Oh yes.
which is amazing. So yeah, well done. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. So so with the speaking, obviously we get through of what you do,
Hmm.
and empowering women. You've said you're also a mental health advocate.
Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about that. What does the term mental health advocate mean to you, and
Hmm.
how does that help you help other people?
Well, you know, being a mental health advocate for me is exactly what it is, advocating for those who are really not in a position to advocate for themselves. Probably 6 years ago, I knew nothing about mental health, wasn't interested in mental health. I married someone that, unbeknownst to me, had a really ferocious drug addiction. And
Yeah.
probably 4 months after we were married, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. So it went from being just a regular troubled marriage to a marriage from hell. And all of the
Really
things that
quickly.
came with that. I had no idea what mental health was. I didn't know what bipolar was. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. But what it did was it forced me to get educated, because you don't know how to cope, live, and operate in something if you don't know what it is.
No.
And so by the time I got out of the marriage, and I was done with that because I knew I could not help him, he was spiraling, things were getting 10 times worse, and infidelity started to come into play, and I was out. I did
Right.
understand that there were several women like me, specifically women, because I'm a woman, that are dealing with a similar situation like this. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to deal with these components of mental illness. So I
Mm.
got a hold of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, which is one of the largest grassroots mental health organizations, and I started training. Now I'm no longer with him, no intentions of being with him. I still needed to know what happened, because there was so
Yeah.
much trauma, domestic violence, aggression, and anger, and I did not understand where that was stemming from. So once
No.
I understood, I knew that there were people that needed help. There were people that could not navigate this. And now that I'd been exposed and educated, I felt that it was my responsibility to make sure I can support individuals, not him, but like him, to get the help that they need to be able to live productive lives. So that's my advocacy, is getting involved, using my voice, using my power as a citizen to talk to elected officials and make sure that they understand, and speaking to the communities about the stigma of it. There's nothing wrong with getting mental health help. The
No.
problem is when you don't get it and you subject other people to it. That's the problem.
Absolutely spot on. Well
Yeah.
done. Yeah, no, that's incredible.
Thank
Absolutely incredible. And it's amazing to hear you, not sorry, not that you've been through those troubles, but as with so many great public speakers, it's amazing to hear that you've taken something traumatic and turned it into what you call, what was the word? Purpose,
you.
responsibility.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I like I like that term, but not everybody will take things to that responsibility. And that's not about everybody who's been through trauma should do that, but
Right.
it's something within yourself, isn't it? It's part of who you are. And I get that because I've been in not the same situation, but the same process of when you discover something and you realize, oh my goodness, this could help other people and they don't know this. What do you do with it? And it does become like a responsibility. And if you don't do something with it, it almost becomes like a burden in itself, doesn't it? And it's just
Yep.
like nagging and niggling about, you need to share this and you need to. So
Mm-hmm.
it's well done to you. And I absolutely understand 100% where you are coming from
Yeah.
on that journey. So, well, that is amazing.
Thank
So,
you.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's amazing to hear about the mental health advocate. And I love the way you talk about helping people who are not in a place to be able to help themselves right
Oh
now.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And
It's most
yeah,
important. I think once you really understand that mental illness is a imbalance, a mental
mm,
imbalance of the brain, then you will start to understand that what helped me to be able to move past my marriage and not to hate him, or I don't love him, I don't hate him, it
mm,
was just a segment in time, was that I really understood that some of his bad behavior, really bad behavior and bad actions, he couldn't do anything about. This was
yeah,
something that probably was either genetics or brought on. He was a child of trauma. He had
yeah,
parents that were involved with drug addiction and different things. He was born into that. This is what he knew. I
yeah,
also understood that his drug addiction was the longest, closest relationship that he had. So I was competing with a drug
mm,
addiction. I was the mistress, regardless. It was the
wow,
wife. And so once I really understood, I could not be mad. I could not hate him. I don't have anything to do with him. I don't intend on that.
mm,
But I could not be angry if I really and truly believe that you have no control. So I tell
no,
people it's not enough to just go to therapy and scream and shout, but you have to get the education to understand. Because once you
mm,
understand, it helps you to compartmentalize your own personal feelings, how you accept
yeah.
responsibility, and how you move forward. And for me, if I hadn't done that, I'd be stagnant, and that just wasn't an option for me.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I've had a couple of people on the show who have talked about this, excuse me, in terms of either journeys of healing or forgiveness. In that the peace doesn't come from arguing. The peace comes within yourself from forgiving, and you don't even have to see that person to forgive within your heart. And
Correct.
and I do understand that because I've been in a similar relationship, but without the drugs, but the rest of it
Mhm.
similar. And people have heard me talk about that on the show before, particularly when I spoke with a lady named Lois Wagner from South Africa. And she'd been through a very traumatic time being attacked, but it was all about that journey of forgiveness, which was incredible. So I know exactly where you're coming from there. And it is an important message that we still need to keep sharing because there's always somebody new who will hear it, or somebody new going through something, or struggling to recover from whatever emotional challenges they've had in relationships and life. And it might not even be a relationship, but it's something that, like you said, if you're living with that pain and you don't understand why. And it took me years after a relationship to realize what my partner or my ex-fiance had been dealing with, like you said, and he didn't choose it. He was born into it. It's all he knew, and he'd never sought help. But
Mhm.
what I'm talking about is over 30 years ago, or about 30 years ago, and there was none of this talk about all this, these different personality disorders back then. You just didn't hear about them.
Right.
People were either just badly behaved or very strange, and that was all we knew.
Yeah.
Um, but there is a
Ab-
lot more knowledge and awareness now. But
Yeah.
young girls leaving school and getting into relationships, and even mature women, like you say, don't always know what they're getting into,
Mhm.
and they're hardly screened like a medical before you get into that relationship, are they?
Right.
Mm.
Absolutely. But,
So,
not only that, women are natural born nurturers. And one
mm,
thing that I consistently let women know is that this is what I grew up with four older brothers. And so we are kind of
yeah,
trained as women what our role is a little bit, even though my mother's a very independent woman. But it's not our job to fix anyone. We get caught up in this as my husband, my boyfriend, my partner, whatever. It Once I realized his trauma was there before I came along, before I
Yeah.
was thought of. I don't know all the cues of what happened. It's very presumptuous of me to even think I can help him with something that I don't even know how it came into play. And
No.
once we understand and stop trying to fix people and allow them, help them to empower them to fix themselves, my ex had the longest life of turmoil. That was what he knew. So the
Yeah.
life that he was having with me wasn't working for him because there wasn't drama, there wasn't drug addiction, there wasn't prostitution, all this different stuff he was accustomed to. So my life was
Mm.
dull and boring. And I totally understand that now, that he
Yeah,
could
that
not have
makes
been
sense.
happy in that situation with me. So once we
Mm.
stop trying to fix people, allow them to fix themselves, and focus on our own lives, we have a much better, fulfilling life than spending all of our time trying to fix something that you don't even know that you don't even have the capability to fix because you didn't break it, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense because, like you say, a lot of people they get comfortable with what they know, as
Mm-hmm.
you're explaining that so beautifully. And it's like in lockdown is similar at the moment, is that nobody thought they'd be comfortable in lockdown. But so many people now are sort of afraid of coming out of lockdown because they've got comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So it's we're working towards the end of it slowly. We don't know what it's like where you are at the moment, but over here we're still trying to work out of what should have been a 28-day lockdown in November. Um, but it is that comfort zone, and what should be a comfort zone and what becomes a comfort zone are two separate things, and it's how to make people aware of actually that's not really a comfort zone. It's just what they're accustomed to, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It's actually, I have one of the presentation. It's also in my third upcoming book, is where I talk to people about not being tethered to a box and not letting
mm,
people put you in a box to where you can't mentally remove yourself from it because they've already decided who you are, what you are, and why you are. And
mm,
once you do that, you can't, when you've put yourself in a place of, I will only be here to fix other people's problems, and I'm a fixer. That was a huge problem that I have. You get
yeah,
so committed to fixing people that you don't realize you are putting yourself in a box. And before you know
yeah.
it, you can't get out of it. So it's really knowing how to take care of ourselves and not be so invested in other people.
Mm. No, it's very interesting. But then there's just to sort of point out, there's a slightly different side to this. Is when you're in a relationship with somebody, you can sever that relationship. But when it's your child who's like
Mm,
it, or you're a child and the parent is like it, this is a whole different story, isn't it?
yeah.
But it's supporting other people as well. But we've actually got somebody on next week talking about it from the child's point of view, growing up in a family like that. So
Hmm.
I'm looking forward to that on the back of tonight's. This is going to run quite nicely in
Yeah.
sequence now.
Nice.
But yeah, so you you say you've done written a book or collaborated on a book as well.
Right.
So is this all tied in with what you're doing with this public speaking?
Absolutely. I was a young woman reached out to me. She's very successful. She's a TED talker, multi best-selling author, international best-selling author, and she handpicked specific authors that she wanted to be able to encourage women. And it's called The Power of Why. Why 22 women created online workshops and trying to encourage women during COVID-19 to not get settled. You know, I have a saying that I say all the time, being deliberately you. And so we all
Mm,
had a chapter. I believe my chapter is 17. And I talk about how I got into doing workshops, why it was important to do workshops. And again, I always talk about being in a box, not allowing yourself to be stagnant and always reinventing who you are and who you can be. Because now we're in COVID-19. What are you going to do? Starve? No, you better reinvent another way to be able to take care of yourself and your family. So,
yeah.
and it became an international bestseller within, I think, about 3 days or less. And it's a fantastic book, and it really gives a lot of detailed insight into how we became really successful doing what we're all doing.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, it
Mhm.
sounds really good. So yeah, what we'll do is we'll drop a link to that in the chat afterwards. And you say you told me as well you're on your third book now. So what was the second book?
Well, the first book was 10 Steps to Becoming a Highly Effective Public Speaker. That was my first book. That's my
Okay.
love of public speaking. So,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
that's in hard copy and ebook. The second
Oh,
was the
lovely.
collaboration, The Power of Why. And my third book, which I believe is with the publisher, should be out in April, and it's entitled Trusting Someone Else's Heart. So I'm super excited about that. It's a story of my personal journey. So I'm excited about that one. Yeah.
Oh, that's a lovely title as well. I think that's really going to resonate. Well chosen title.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, so I was trying to think where to go from here, because we've covered a lot quite quickly tonight. It's normally we're still trying to get through half of it by the end.
Right.
So yeah, so how have you got any sort of examples of how your work has helped other people? Something you can tell us, any stories?
Yeah, I have a lot of stories like that. You know, when I started off on this journey, when I got out of the marital situation, that had been the only horrible relationship situation I'd ever been in. And I immediately went to therapy. And I ended up with anxiety. I lived with anxiety and PTSD because of it, because there was so much violence. He wasn't hitting me. He never put his hands on me, but, you know, I was every name in the book. I was threatened, you know, to the point of, you know, I probably would have preferred the hit to get it over with. You know, you still live with the voices and the bad behavior.
Abuse, yeah.
But I went to therapy. And when I started therapy, I was really focusing on the trauma. And I remember my therapist told me, but you're not going to be able to move past this if you don't focus on yourself. Towards the end, my ex-husband brought a woman into the arrangement. He started having sex with the mental health caseworker at a mental health facility. And so, yeah, I know, horrendous. And so I believe she had mental illness because she started helping him, kind of doing attack tactics on me. So I was trying to navigate me, but I couldn't remove myself from that. And so once I really started focusing on Tamuri, that's when I started making a huge shift away from it. So I always tell women, and I tell men, because I find men at my conferences or my seminars. I'm a domestic violence conqueror, and I always try to support men and women. They come up to me crying. I've had a line of people wanting to tell me their story, how I encouraged them to get out of a situation, or I am living the exact same situation that you lived, or I didn't know how I was going to get out of this. Now I know I can do it. I thought I was alone. That's why stories like mine are so important, because people literally think that what they're living through, there is no one else. Because when you're in a cocoon of hell or of a bad situation, you don't see the other side of it. Again, it's like being in a box. You have no idea what's outside of the box because you're within those four walls. So I've had the privilege of having people reach out to me randomly through Messenger saying, I saw your conference, you uplifted me. That's what I'm doing it for. I want women to know specifically that you have an option. You don't have to stay in a bad relationship. You don't have to be tethered to anyone, regardless if there's a ring or not. You have to put you first. You are more than a title of mother and wife. There's so much more to you before those things. And so I try to encourage them to always look at a situation and see your accountability. Because even though my ex was like 99% wrong, I had to look at that 1%, what I did to contribute to my own unhappiness, because blaming him for the rest of my life wasn't going to do anything for me. And once I said, well, Tamuri, you decided to stay in a relationship with a drug addict. You didn't vet him properly. You didn't know who you were marrying. Well, I can't put that on him. That's my responsibility. It helped me move full steam ahead. And so when I meet people and I try to encourage them as much as I can to not live in guilt, but live in what the afterwards look like. Focus on your future, not your now, but focus on your future. So, yeah.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Oh, that's a really powerful message. And the other thing I think is incredible, unlike 30 years ago when I was going through something similar, and I get exactly what you say, not the physical abuse, but the emotional abuse could be worse. Things that do stick with you. And there was no internet then at all. It didn't exist. So there was no being able to go online and get inspiration from other women. And people are not as alone anywhere near as much today as you would have been then. I couldn't even pick up a mobile phone or a house phone then. I literally, when I was in trouble, had to leave the house and run for a public phone box to get help because, there was no other way of communicating from inside the home.
Yeah.
So today, most people have got a mobile phone, and there are ways of making secret calls if somebody feels in danger. So there's another thing to really think of important, isn't it? About if a woman is in that position, is educating them how to plan forward.
Right.
And be prepared that if it is the worst case scenario, they've got a way of communicating discreetly to get help, and they can do that. But also planning that journey out, or just getting out, depending on how bad it is.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
definitely very, very powerful message. But I think the other thing is important is for people to realize that don't just run out and be out on your own. Have somebody supporting you. Contact a friend or a relative, or a local organization, or somebody who can support you. And I think that's really important in it as well, knowing that you should do it with some support somewhere in the background, and not feel alone, because it feels much worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and what is your alternative? I always tell women, I'm going to give you the information. You're going to do it when it works for you. Don't assume to think I'm judging you. I'm not judging you. It's not my place to. You will make your move when you're ready to make your move. But what you need to know in this very moment you should do is plan. Because at any moment you may need to execute that, and you need to know that you can try to survive. If I don't have money, where will I go? Is there ways for me to siphon a little bit of money and maybe put it in my mother's name, my sister's name, my brother's name, or an account somewhere? How do I do that? What's my plan? Where do I go where I can be safe? How do I? So when you get ready to, because you're not going to be able to force anyone to leave. And, when they leave, if it's not all their decision, they're going to go right back. So when they're ready, I encourage a plan, a well thought out plan, because the situation that you're not living in. I mean, an abuser works with you. Before an abuser puts his hands on you, he manipulates your mind, because once he traps you here, he knows your body isn't going anywhere. So it's really empowering them to know that you can take care of yourself. You don't need that abuse, and all the things that come with that. But most definitely, when they're ready to make that move, make sure you have a plan in place so you can do it, so you don't have to come back. You don't have to deal with it again.
That's a really important part, actually, about them not going back as well.
Yeah.
Because if it didn't work out once, it won't work out again. It's very, very extremely unlikely that it would be a case of everything would be resolved and that the relationship would move forward positively. And that can be a very bad cycle to get into for some women, like you said, if they don't make that plan, or moving in with somebody similar and then repeating the process. So, like you said, doing the vetting, making sure you know what you want from somebody. And it is very difficult. I mean, I've come out of a marriage last year after 28 years. So no matter how much I vetted him, I had no idea what's going to happen down the end of the road that far. And there are sometimes you vet somebody all you like, but you don't know where a marriage is going to go long term. How we managed those many years, I'm not sure, but we did. We did, and they were quite good. But it was just the last few years things went a little bit downhill, and then we separated mutually. But nothing like the previous relationship. But that's a completely different experience. But it's very difficult, and like it's interesting when you say about yourself as well. There's becomes this emotional battle between what they did and then the guilt, isn't it? It's like the anger. It's actually a mixture of anger against what the other person's done and guilt against, well, what did I do wrong? Why did I feel? And it's that almost self-worthlessness, isn't it? About why did I find myself in this situation? And it's how to battle that and work through it. There's so many emotions.
Yes.
So many emotions. Yeah.
I battle with that the longest, I think, in therapy, the hardest. I'm a very loyal person. So the betrayal of infidelity probably stung me. I'm sure the intent was to sting me, and it did sting me. But I think the longest part in therapy was the guilt I felt. I felt, how stupid of you. How did you not know this person is a drug addict? How did you not know that this person has mental illness? Why didn't you meet their family? I assure you, if I hadn't met anybody in his family, I would have known there were some deep-seated problems. I didn't do any of that. So I just felt like those were years I didn't have to live had I done all the proper research. And so it took me time to get past that and say, no, Tamuri, you weren't stupid. You were human. And based off of my third book, you trusted someone else's heart. And when we trust someone else's heart, We're trusting that it's pure, that it's clean, that it has the right intent. And when we do that, we don't always get what we intend. So absolutely, you're just human.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what makes me think was I'm going to have to find it now. There was a quote on LinkedIn today, and it made me laugh, but it actually brings up a lot of things. I'm going to look this up while we're talking now. This quote on LinkedIn very much sums this up about trusting people. And like you said, when you've had a bad experience, how do you then go out and find somebody else and learn to trust again, isn't it? It's the next stage in rebuilding your life. And I'm going to have to find this now because it's going to bug me otherwise. Here we go. I found it. Excuse the one swear word in the middle. It says not all men. And I just want to highlight actually, sometimes this can also be relationships between two men, two women, all kinds of relationships these days. And it says no, not all men. But if I gave you a box of Maltesers and I told you that 1 in 10 of them was actually a nugget of shit rolled in a ball and dipped in milk chocolate, would you be wary of all of them? So you've got a box of Maltesers and one of them in there is genuinely unpleasant, and someone says, here's the box, and one of them is bad egg, so to speak. Would you not be wary of all of them?
Absolutely.
And I thought that was so well put. Well put. And it's caused a bit of a contentious issue in conversation over on LinkedIn today, but it was fun to read.
Well, people would like to think that, oh no, it's just that one. Listen, when you have gone through some stuff with someone that you've trusted and you come out of that situation, you would be a fool not to look at everyone with Superman laser eyeballs. You would absolutely be foolish not to do that. So I had to go through a process so I didn't distrust everyone again. And so when I meet new men, and it took me a while. I wasn't dating. I didn't jump into a relationship. That was such the horrible situation. I needed to process me. But I wanted to make sure when I started dating that I don't give some other man his stuff or the drama that I went through, who has nothing to do with it, who's just a really good, decent guy. So that's that part of working on you, though. That's nothing your ex can do. When you work on you and you build that confidence back up, now you're confident I'm going to do all the right things this time. I may or may not get it right, but you step out there again and you step out on the faith of yourself, not on that person.
Yeah, that I really like that. It's very nicely put. But so not carrying the old trauma into the new relationship. Like you said, he's all yours. I like that. Yeah, and that is very important. And I get that because I've been doing the same. That just takes time to work on myself. And just not move forward. And the amount of people who just assume that you're going to just move forward and you're going to find somebody else. But it's like, why would I, when I'm not, I'm still processing what I've been through? Why would I move on already? You might have done, but I'm not ready to.
Right. Yeah.
And like you said earlier about the sting, yes, it does sting. It does, and painfully. And it's they are physically, sometimes the stress and anxiety and all the emotions that come with that can actually manifest physically, and you feel them physically, and they can last for days and weeks and months, these emotions. But getting help and support is so important.
It is, because it really helped me to compartmentalize the trauma. When I was able to start working on my emotions, which was pretty immediately, the betrayal of him being with another woman started to subside. I mean, number one, he picked a much inferior woman. Let me just say that. But number two, I started to realize that it had nothing to do with me. This is a man that's struggling mental illness. He date a chicken with lipstick on if the chicken had on a cute mini skirt. It would have been anyone. It had nothing to do with me. But once I processed that, that's why getting treatment for yourself and help for yourself is so important, because I didn't have to compartmentalize his infidelity. It wasn't mine. It was his. And I didn't have to put that on me. I didn't have to put that betrayal on me. It was his betrayal. But you don't do that when you don't allow yourself to mourn that situation, grieve it, work on you and move past it. You hold all of that in. And instead of you giving it to where it belongs, you now allow it to suck you into, it's all my fault. I did it. I wasn't good enough. No, that was all him. Had nothing to do with me. And that's exactly where I left it.
Oh, you're incredibly strong and well done. It takes strength to ask for help as well. It's I thought, again, another quote I saw the other week about something about, basically it's the wise man who will seek help. And I can't remember how the quote went, but basically, yeah, it is not smart to not seek help. Wise to seek help and recognize when you need support and accept that. And because a lot of people will go for therapy, but go with the expectation it's not going to work. And they will like put walls and barriers up, and you're like, well, it's not going to work if you go in thinking it's not going to work, because you're not taking on the lessons, you're not really absorbing that support as well. I think it's another thing for people to be aware of, is be open to that actually working. And sometimes it might not be the message they tell you. I mean, oh my goodness, I had therapy years ago, and after my bad breakup, but it took several years before I went for therapy, and I'd held it in, so I know how it feels, and it's not good. And you're just delaying the inevitable and making it unendurable almost. And it messes with other parts of life. So just get on with it and go and get the help. Do it sooner. But it was almost, they gave me the message about I was trying to be too much in control and I needed to let go. And I was like, actually, no, I hadn't been in control at all. And that was the point where I started to take control of my life. So don't just think that because what they say is not what fits you, that you've just got to say, that's it, it didn't work. You've got to take your own messages from it as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep in mind, therapy is not a miracle pill. So many people don't know what therapy is. I had someone tell me a while ago, well, I went to therapy and it didn't work. The therapist just sat there and listened. What do you think the therapist is supposed to do? He or she can't be responsible for your life and give you bad information so you can come back and soothe them. Their job is to be a sounding board, to help you figure out what works for you, help you to create strategy, help you to, make sure that you're going towards a positive direction. No therapist is ever going to tell you, this is what you do, this is how you do it, and this is where you do it. That would be malpractice times 10. They are not in a position to do that. Only you can come to those conclusions. They're there to listen and to help you steer yourself in the right direction, not do the work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Well said. Yeah. And that is all they can do. And I think a good way to think of this is in terms of, if you go to a friend for help, they might not be called a therapist, they're called a friend, but are they going to guide you in the right way?
Right.
Or are they going to give you advice and bias and judgment, exactly what the therapist doesn't? And how does that go down?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And they will give you the wrong information and tell you advice you don't want to hear, and you fall out with friends and you come away with a bad taste. And it's like, go to a therapist, because you're going to be able to walk away from that at the end of telling them all your deepest, darkest fears and nightmares and worries and anxieties, and they're not going to go around and then tell all your other friends and family. Trust a therapist.
Absolutely. I remember going to therapy sometimes and having a rant session, and then I'll rant something off, and at the end I'm like, oh, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. Now that I thought about it, I've just rethought that whole situation. Sometimes you can hear yourself talk and realize that what you say or what you were thinking makes no sense at all. And now you're able, and he or she is able to help steer you towards a more manageable way of functioning. Because I have literally talked myself out of crazy thoughts that I was thinking, or things that I was saying. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, now that I think about that and I say it out loud. So that's what your therapist is there for. So utilize them, definitely.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we don't listen to ourselves very well. And if you're not sure what that means, try asking yourself a question in the mirror and then answer yourself in the mirror as though you're talking to another person. And it's very different to when you're just walking around having a conversation in your head with yourself. So it's about being able to put things on that objective point of view, because we're all good at giving a friend advice, but not ourselves.
Yeah.
So if you're trained doing it in the mirror, you might start to realize that actually there's a reason why that therapist is a good listener, and they're trained to listen and just gently guide you in the right direction. And it's so powerful, and it can help people to transform through situations so quickly. You have to kind of do it with a purpose, not do it with the expectation they're going to do all the work and you're just going to miraculously get rid of all these horrible feelings and forget what happened in life. You're not going to forget from it. You have to learn from it. You've either got to learn from it or regret it, or feel spiteful about it. But you know, learning from it is the most powerful by any means. So yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Working through trauma is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So you say you've been doing, I'm going to loop back around a minute now. So you've done the public speaking for 6 years. So tell us about some of the audiences you've had. So when you've done stage, have you done TEDx?
I have not. That is on my to-do list, and I will be doing it soon. It's on my list to do. So
look forward to following the journey.
Yeah, you know what? I've just I've wanted to do it for a very long time. I've been approached to do it. I'm so busy speaking, and not that I couldn't or wouldn't make time for it. But you know, a lot of people may not know you have to apply, and it's a process and things of that nature. And I am like so big, I can't even, you know, I do interviews, podcasts, but I do a lot of conferences and virtual seminars. I'm busy a lot, but it is definitely something I want to do for the upcoming year, if not towards the end of the year. That would be absolutely wonderful for me. I would love to do it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I wish you luck with that. Let me know when you do. I'll follow the journey.
Thank you.
That is a difficult journey.
All right, I'll get there.
Yeah, no, I have done one, and it is a very difficult journey, and not something you recommend for the faint of heart. So absolutely amazing. I look forward to hearing about that one. So you say you're doing professional conferences and seminars. So what sort of audiences you've had? Tell us about that.
Variety, mostly professional, mostly, you know, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have multiple businesses. So usually it's a professional audience. It can be a mixture, but it's mostly professional. I've spoken up to 5,000 people before. That's probably my largest audience. I love speaking. I'm very comfortable. Actually, the larger the audience, the more comfort I have, which is kind of, some people like smaller audiences. But yeah, I do a lot of speaking in the Black community on, you know, mental health. I'm a co-chair for NAMI's Black Mental Minds Matter support group, as well as committee. So, and I'm also just joining another Black mental health organization. So I've done webinars. I'm also a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. So last year we did a couple of mental health webinars for the Black community, breaking the stigma, encouraging mental health. And we had a couple of hundred individuals that were participants that were virtually. So now everything's mostly virtual, but I have done in person. And coming up this Saturday, March the 20th, I'm going to be one of the speakers at the legendary Women's of Influence. And there's going to be 10 speakers, and we're going to be talking to other entrepreneurs, prospective entrepreneurs. And I'm going to be speaking to them on the importance of influential storytelling and why that is. So yeah, so definitely I do domestic violence keynote addresses. I've done them with shelters, with community centers, and domestic violence shelters. So absolutely, yeah. So I'm out there a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, and some really, really important audiences as well. I mean, that's quite diverse, like you say, going from domestic violence straight through to corporate. Very diverse range of audiences. Yeah,
absolutely. One of my largest clients is in the Dubai, and their women are getting more so into media. So I do virtual coaching. I also create videotapes we send back, and they're able to go over the tips of communication, how to work the camera, how to be good virtually as opposed to, out maybe broadcasting in person. I also have a client in China that I do public speaking. And so it's an assortment. I don't feel it's important for me to be locked into, again, that box. If it's a skill that I have, and this is a skill that I have, and I'm very good at it, I want to make sure that I can surround myself in as many genres and audiences as possible. So it's been great.
Oh, that is amazing. You've definitely inspiring me tonight in where I'm
Oh.
going to take my journey. Um, and it's been very difficult to launch a public speaking career in the middle of lockdown, other than by doing StreamYard lives.
Yeah,
um,
definitely.
Yet a lot to come.
That's right.
We
It
may
can
even
happen,
see each
does
other
happen.
on stage in the future.
Yes.
So, brilliant. So yeah, so I love the fact you're doing so much work, like you say, with women who have obviously been through trauma. You sound about people through domestic violence, because that's really important as well. And at the end of the day, although you say you can't fix everybody, it's also really important, I think, to raise awareness that people who commit domestic violence are people who themselves have lost control of their emotions. And as much as there's the victim who's suffering, there's also an element of suffering in the perpetrator. So it's about, there is that importance of educating to prevent recurrences, isn't there?
Hmm.
To try
Hmm.
and reduce the rates. So it's important to address both sides of it.
Yeah.
We can't spend the whole of history just picking up victims. There has to be an element of dealing with both sides of it, and trying
Right.
to reduce it.
You're right. There definitely should be, because if you look at, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about someone else who kind of got caught in some domestic violence situation. It's a guy, and I was saying, in order for, in my opinion, and I'm just going to use men because I'm a woman, for a man to hit and feel it's okay to abuse a woman, it has to be some form of mental illness. There has to be a trauma, because for you to see someone who is less aggressive, that you know that you can control with will, you know that you can bully, and for you to be okay with that has to be something that you're grappling with. And you're right,
Mm,
there usually is some trauma, either have seen someone being abused, or, that was the case in my ex-husband. His father used to abuse women that he was with. He beat women, and he knew
mm,
that. And so that was how he thought. Now, like I said, he never put his hands on me, but he beat every other woman. I don't, and he did everything else according to that. And so we also know that he has severe mental illness. So I think there
mm,
has to be something. Yes, there should be, but I think why the energy is not spent on the aggressor is because oftentimes the aggressors don't seek treatment. They don't seek help. They don't see
no,
anything wrong. It's that part of that narcissism that tells them that I'm hitting you because you did, and because
yeah,
me. And you can't, and the percentage of narcissists that are able to really change their thinking, their way of operating, is so small. I don't even know what the percentage is, but it's very little. It's hard to change a mindset that you have when you've created that nothing is wrong and you haven't done anything wrong. So I
mm,
think a man can only abuse what he will be allowed to abuse. So if you can't fix him or work with him, then you teach the women or the men that are being abused to love themselves enough to say, you're
mm,
verbally abusing me. I'm not waiting for the next steps. I'm out. And if
yeah,
enough women did that, well, then we don't have to worry about the aggressor, because nobody's going to take it. So it's kind
mm,
of like you have to deal with who you can work with and support, because oftentimes you can't help people who don't acknowledge they have a problem. You know.
yeah. I think that's boundaries, isn't it? Setting boundaries.
Oh yeah.
Um, and that was the big thing I learned, was if you don't set your own boundaries, how can you expect somebody else to respect them?
Yeah, absolutely. And be okay with
Yeah,
what that boundary sets. I'm the same
yeah,
way. I create a boundary, he'd inch it up. And then I'd let it be inched up. And then I'd set another boundary, and then he'd inch it up.
mm,
Well, after a while, there was no more thread. It was all gone. So
yeah,
once you set it, you're absolutely right. Be firm in it. And be firm in where that boundary. Maybe he might say, well, I'm leaving it. Well, then leave. If
yeah,
that's a boundary that is important to you and
mm,
who you are as a person, be prepared to lose someone to save yourself.
yeah. Yeah, that is a powerful thing, and very difficult sometimes for people to feel like
Mm.
they're willing to lose that companionship and that love, to
Yeah.
the point themselves feeling like, well, if this didn't work, how can I make it work again? But
Yeah.
actually, you can.
Right.
When you're ready, but you have to be ready, and you have to take time, and you have to have support.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it is possible.
Yeah.
Um, not everybody will choose to. Some will choose to stay on their own and be independent. And that may be like for years, and then things can happen when you least expect. I've seen it in so many people. But yeah, just like you said, why was another quote was in why be unhappy living with somebody when you could be happier living on your own, you know?
Yeah.
And it takes time. Also, no, in other words, if you can't be happy living on your own, you shouldn't be in a relationship. That was the other one I've heard. So
Yeah.
you need to be understanding yourself and not, it's like, don't put your heart in somebody else's hands. Look after it yourself. And then when you find the right person, they'll share that life with you. But it's not
Yeah.
about giving your heart away. It's about letting people share it with you. And
Yeah.
yeah, so many important messages tonight.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And keep in mind, that's learned trained behavior. Either the aggressor is going to train you, or you've been trained based upon the childhood experiences or trauma. A
Mm,
lot of women, I dealt with my situation for a little bit under 3 years, and I mainly kept telling myself, well, he's got mental illness, and if he didn't have this, he wouldn't. I don't know what he would have been like if he didn't have it. I just know that he was
mm,
a complete maniac with it, and I knew that he hadn't hit me, and it was a chance that at some point he was going to attempt to hit me, and neither I nor my family was going to take that. So it
no.
just wasn't healthy at all. But you have to also think that there are a lot of people that have to be with someone that comes from abandonment over the years, that comes from
Mm,
their own trauma. And an
yeah.
abuser and an aggressor knows how to pick their targets. My ex,
Yeah.
I believe, felt that women with children, I had 2 children when we got married. I think he believed that women with children were good victims because all of his past women that he abused, they all had children. But I loved
Yeah.
my children more than I could even like him. And
Yeah.
I wasn't going to let my son think that it's a good example for you ever to dishonor or disrespect women because I would allow him to do it. And I
Mm,
understood that I was setting an example for my daughter of how relationships are by allowing this man to scream, yell, disrupt, and dishonor her mother in front of him because he had no honor. And so once
mm,
I said, no, you've ruined your kids, you won't ruin mine. And I have straight A students, wonderful kids that are well liked and well loved, and their father is fully in the picture. There was no reason for me to allow this man to take me down and take my
mm,
kids down with him. So it just,
yeah.
it's
Well done.
really a culmination of things, but it has to be worth it for you to get out of it. And hopefully people love themselves enough. It's not worth it. It's just
No,
not. Yeah.
no. No, it's interesting actually because there's another aspect in there that can happen is sometimes a man will get into a family with children and he'll be as nice as pie to the mother, but could be abusing the kids as well. So it's about
Hmm.
how can mothers be aware of that? And I think it's another one to raise, they go into this sort of blindsided that this this guy is the best thing in the world, but the kids are suffering and they're being abused and manipulated to keep quiet. So it's
Hmm.
just this whole other side of it about raising awareness with mothers that go into a second and third relationship about being open with their children about if things happen, you must talk. So there's a whole other area of support needed there, isn't
Yeah,
there?
yeah. And it all, I mean, everything comes down to how much you love yourself because, if you love yourself enough, you're in tune. And even
Mm,
if, I now understand that, I'm definitely human in the situation. You're right, that's a great example. He was nice to my kids. He wasn't a father figure because he wasn't a father to his own kids, but he was nice to my kids. But
okay,
they
that's
got
good.
to also see him disrespect and dishonor his mother. So towards
Mm,
the end of it, we never said his name again. Matter of fact, my kids came up with the name of Voldemort. So that's how we refer to him. That's how we referred
yeah.
to him. We never said his name again. We've never looked for him. He ceased to exist after the day that, way before our divorce. The moment
Mm,
we went our separate ways, he ceased to exist. And I had to apologize to my kids because I had to explain to them that it is not your job to protect me. It's my job to
mm,
protect you. And I brought this person in, regardless if he's got mental illness or not. That's not my fault. I brought him
mm,
in and I didn't vet him enough. And I apologize for doing that because he disrupted our lives. And it's
yeah.
my responsibility to make sure I know who's coming into our world So I had to apologize to them for that disruption, because they weren't accustomed to arguing and fighting and anything. And he lived for it day to day. So, they're doing good. Like I said, we haven't mentioned him in years. And, but putting your kids first, if you have them, will be your saving grace, because he can't be good to the kids and you. He can't do it. Somebody has to get the short end of the stick. And I was getting the short end, and he was nice but standoffish for my kids. So he didn't deal with them too much, but somebody's going to get it. And so I just implore you to love yourself enough. You're not the savior, and you're not required to be. And love does not hurt. And if anyone's hitting you or demeaning you, they do not love you.
No.
Simple as that.
Regardless of what they say. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Regardless
Love doesn't hurt.
Yeah. And it as much as it probably is, I know it's painful to go through. I'm sure that you would agree that you would rather you would have been the one that suffered than the children be the ones that suffer, because you have that power to stop it where they don't. But for children who have witnessed an abusive relationship, we're saying about going and getting help, but it's also about making sure the children get the support they need as well, because they could be living with the trauma for years to come either as well. And it's interesting because you'll get children with it, will also blame the partner that came in and I've gone blank on the word, committed the abuse, or like come in and dominated all this abuse over them. But then there might be other children who actually blame the mum for bringing that person in. And it could go both ways, but just making sure you rebuild those bonds and get therapy for anybody who needs it. And don't dismiss children who are struggling or shutting parents out and things, because that's important as well, to address the whole family. One person might be being abused, but everybody in the family will feel it.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. Children are people too. And I think a lot of times people act like they're luggage and they don't have feelings. Well, they do what I say and go. My kids are allowed to speak up for themselves, tell me what they like, what they don't like. As long as it's respectful, they're allowed to tell me if I say something or do something that they don't like. They're human beings and they have a right. And the moment you diminish them down to nothing, that's the first moment you start to take their power away from them. And you make it that much easier for the world to come in and sling them around and do whatever they want to do. So I try to empower my kids that they have a voice and use it. Even if they don't like something that I do, that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And that's so good. Yeah. I love the word empower when it comes to anybody, to be honest, to give them that power to manage their own emotions, their own life, their own systems, and whatever they're going through, whatever they're trying to learn, transform from. That empowerment is so important over control or manipulation, or it's one thing to be guided or misled as well. And it's just about recognizing that, and having that knowledge and awareness is always so important. So it's so important for these people to learn that from people like yourself, who have an amazing career with public speaking, which I'm really looking forward to getting mine off the ground. We're getting there slowly. And it's just absolutely brilliant work that you're doing. Thank you so much. And I can't believe the hour has absolutely flown by.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. This has been fantastic. A very good conversation.
No, you're very welcome. And I appreciate you coming on and talking about really important topics as well. Thank you. Because a show cannot run without the guests. Otherwise, I spend an hour a week sitting here talking to myself. And I've done very well so far, because on the 50, because I originally did the 28-day live challenge, where I did an hour a night for 28 nights.
Okay.
And then we went on to one a week. And this is now, grab the green book. It's all this in here. We are now on week 15, and I've not yet had to talk to myself, which is really good. We are booked. So just a quick update for everybody coming. I might as well throw it on the end now we're here. Next week, we have Michael Bailey Brown, who is going to talk about growing up amidst mental health issues. And then the following week, I have Susan Horwell, who is going to be talking about self-love, and a book that she's written about self-love. And then we have Perry Power, who will be talking about child abuse. And as we were talking about things going through generations, he's come from a family of a generation after generation of abuse, and how he's broken the cycle. That's going to be a very interesting talk, but if a very difficult one, but a very interesting one. And after that, we have a lady called Mitali Debkesa, and she's going to be talking about her new book, which is about coaches leveraging their business books to help other people, and she's going to be talking about the importance of coaches in life. And I think this will be quite an interesting one, because there are so many coaches out there, but she's an advocate for coaches because of the things it's helped her through in her past. So that's going to be an interesting one. I won't go all the way through the lineup yet. Some exciting things coming in the next few weeks. And thank you to everybody who's watched this evening. And thank you, Yvette. She's put, this is lovely ladies. Well done to both of you. Thank you, Yvette.
Thank you.
Yeah, so who's evening to you both? Where's the week gone? Yeah, I know, it's just like week's gone so quickly. So well done also to Tamuri for sitting through all the technical issues we had getting set up tonight. That was a challenge, but we got there, and it turns out the issues were my end. I couldn't do it from the computer. So what's going on there, I don't know. I need to sort something out with my system settings.
No problem.
But anyway, but thank you so much indeed. It's been a really real pleasure talking to you, and we will have a chat again in the background, because I may have some connections or some suggestions and some bits to share with you. But thank you to everybody else for watching in, and we'll see you again 7 p.m. GMT next Tuesday evening for another live discussion. Thank you.
Bye-bye.